Hello and welcome. I'm Joy Williamson-Lott, Dean of the University of Washington Graduate School, home of the Office of Public Lectures. I want to thank you for joining us for the Graduate School Digital Series, Sexually Speaking, with UW's very own Dr. Pepper Schwartz. In this 5-part short series, Dr. Schwartz will answer questions on love, relationships, and of course, sex. There should be a little something for everyone, we hope. And now a little bit about Dr. Schwartz. Dr. Pepper Schwartz is professor of sociology at the University of Washington. She received her BA and MA from Washington University in St. Louis and her PhD from Yale University. She is past president of the Society for the Scientific Study of Sexualities and past president of the Pacific Sociological Association. The American Sociological Association has given her the award for Public Understanding of Sexuality and the Simon and Gagnon Award for Distinguished Work on Sexualities. She is the author of 25 books and over 50 academic articles. She was the Love, Sex, and Relationship Ambassador for the AARP for over a decade, and for the last 7 years has appeared as a relationship expert on the Lifetime television program Married at First Sight. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. I'm very happy to be here and looking forward to answering your questions. So here we go. Well, here's a value statement, but it is mine, and I do think it comes from sex research in general. If one person and the other person who are with them have agreed that they're going to have a monogamous relationship, and then one of those people says, well, I don't want to have sex again because I just don't enjoy it anymore, or I have issues or whatever, that's not fair, because you decided on monogamy, which means you decided that you two would be each other's only partners. And then if you made a vow, let's say you're married, or you've made a vow of commitment, even if you aren't married, then you're saying, not only have we agreed to be monogamous, but I am now deciding that you cannot be sexual in any interactive sense because I'm done. And this happens in marriages, and it happens in long-term relationships. And I think it's not fair. It's not fair to say you have to be monogamous and you can't have a sexual outlet because I don't want to have it with you. Furthermore, I think when people do that sort of thing or act that way, even if they haven't said it, it's likely their partner isn't going to do that forever, no matter what they agreed to. They may love you and say, okay, I understand, you've got these and this issues, and that, you don't want to take Viagra or something like that because you're worried about your heart, or sex is painful to you now and extra lubrication hasn't seemed to help it. I understand there are issues can happen, or you had an affair and I just don't want to deal with you anymore, even though I don't want the marriage to break up. There's a lot of reasons people stop having sex, but none of them are good in the sense for the long-term welfare of the individuals involved and the committed relationship. So I say if somebody says we're not going to do that anymore for maybe good reasons, then you go, okay, we're going to go to a sex therapist, or we're going to go see a doctor to see what we can do about the physical issues, but we are going to work really hard at trying to fix this. If, for example, you've done everything and it is physical and there are issues that can't be fixed, well, then I think people understand and they deal with it as they will. But to just block it off and say, I'm going to be tired every night and I'm not going to do this, not a good way to go. And I don't think it's fair. Difference in desire is a really common problem. And the more different it is, the bigger the problem it is. So if somebody likes it every day, and I've heard people liking it 2 and 3 times a day, and the other person goes like, once a week is fine for me, that's the most likely thing to send them to a sex therapist. So it's the number one presenting issue for all therapists. So I'm not going to give a glib answer about this, except to say it might mean that some kind of therapist intervention is appropriate. Is it fair to ask someone to have as high a sex drive as you do if you want sex every day or more than every day? No, it's not fair because not everybody has that kind of sex drive. Is it fair for you to ask somebody to have sex every 2 weeks? Not generally, unless you're quite a bit older, because most people want sex more than that, if they're under 70. And some 70-year-olds have strong drives too. The question is, how do you make a compromise? What is a reasonable thing to figure out? And that might need a third person as you talk about why you have sex. Some people use it to calm anxiety. Maybe part of that sex drive can be used up by masturbation. Maybe you can figure out, if you're the less interested person, what warms you up to have it a little bit more than you normally would. It is solvable, but it requires both people thinking about why they have sex and what kind of compromise works. Sex addict is a term that is often thrown at somebody who wants more sex than you do. If I eat 3 big meals a day, am I a food addict? Well, I suppose it depends what point you break and say, okay, if I'm gaining an enormous amount of weight and I seem to be hungry all the time, maybe I am. Maybe I need to look at that and say, how am I using food in a way that is way more than just appreciating it? But addict is a word that bothers me because it always meant a physiological addiction. It meant something where you go into the shakes, tremors, maybe could even die from, a quick cutoff from narcotics, etc. So I feel much more easy with the term habit. Does this person have a sex habit that is over and above what you think sex is about? Sex is about release. It's about pleasure. It can be about connection. Masturbation, it may be just a way to reduce anxiety or to just get over an urge that is interfering with what else you're trying to do. If somebody needs to do that more than another person, it's not so much a question of addiction, but rather, are those two habits and meanings of sex in alignment? And if not, can you figure them out in a way that honors everybody's authentic feelings? So, for example, if you have a partner who wants sex twice a day and that is just not the way your sex drive rolls, you have to say, okay, do you really need me for all of this? Why don't you take care of some of it just yourself? And I know you want me to be there in a really authentic way to me. I want you and I want to have that experience with you. And I don't want to feel used because you and I don't want me to be there in a way that is just completely on your schedule and not at all on mine. I mean, partners often sort of, give a freebie for the other partner occasionally because they weren't interested to it, but they do want their partner to have that kind of pleasure and they want to give them that kind of moment. But on the other hand, they wouldn't want to be doing that in such a rigid schedule that it now becomes a chore. They don't want sex to be a chore for either partner. So let's get rid of the addiction word and hurl that at anybody. And let's just say, let's figure out to have a sex life that pleases us both. Well, sex toys are fun ways to have additional stimuli or to be kind of a creative, exciting thing because they're slightly exotic, or you go pick them out yourself and there's all this anticipation. In terms of the best one, obviously the ones that have both internal and external vibration have been the one that was storied on Sex and the City many years ago, which is variously called the rabbit or the beaver, etc. Why is it called the rabbit or the beaver or something else? Is because there's a part of it that goes internal like a penis, And the external one has a motor, is turned on as well. It can have an independent or similar motor, and it is positioned to excite the clitoral area at the same time it's inside a woman. And they rotate. They can do various things that penises don't do, or would frighten me if someone told me theirs did it. That just aren't biologically possible for a penis. And so that makes some of the things that they do really exciting, and somebody loves giving that to a female partner in a lesbian or heterosexual relationship. There are other kinds of sex toys that men like in gay or in heterosexual relationships that they would say is the best for them. Sometimes it's a ring that goes over both the scrotum and the penis, so when the penis gets erect, a lot more blood surges in it, and it feels even more intense for them. It's one of those things that you have to remember to take off after you have an orgasm, or it can cause damage. But that's been a favorite one of a lot of guys, sometimes with gay guys or some heterosexuals. They like anal play, and there's vibrators that can go in there that have a stopper so that they don't go too far in. I think the thing about sex toys is the fun of it is maybe going online or going to, store, not so much in COVID-19, but going online and looking at them together and say, would this be fun? And even if it's not effective, it might have been just a great giggle just to try it out or even to look at it together. So the whole idea of sex toys is additive to an already good sex relationship. Shouldn't be seen as something you're doing because something's lacking. It's just erotic because it's unusual. And what I say to guys, sometimes people get like, oh my gosh, I'll get addicted to a vibrator and she'll never want me again. And I just basically have to say, I know of no one who has written a note to their boyfriend or husband saying, I'm leaving with the vibrator and the two of us are going to be happy and we don't need you anymore. It just doesn't happen that way. I tell men to look at sex toys and women for that matter as a colleague rather than a competitor, and just have fun with it. You know, I don't like to think of us as trained seals where, we have to be able to hold the ball on our nose. And if we aren't able to do that, we're not a good seal. There's no reason somebody has to have an orgasm during intercourse. And for women, in fact, it is much harder to have an orgasm during intercourse than it is having oral sex or a vibrator, because you need to bring in a lot of blood into the clitoral area. And most of the nerve endings are in the clitoral stem, the little part you see outside, the stem of it, and big nerve endings that come around the beginning of the vaginal barrel. There's very few nerve endings in the barrel itself, and some on the end of the cervix, but most of them are up front. So when a woman has intercourse with a man, the way the penis gets in gives some stimulation, pulls at those areas, but it's not going to give anywhere near the stimulation of oral, digital sex or vibration. Why your boyfriend feels you need to have it that way is the issue. He needs to feel like only he can give you an orgasm, or at least that he's giving you his pleasure. What he's giving you is the excitement of being with him. And I think you need him to hear this, because you are not the only woman like this. I'd say the vast majority of women do not easily have orgasms during intercourse, and for many of them that do have it, it takes quite a while. If it is extremely important to do it, probably the best way to do it is to get excited, get very close to having an orgasm with either digital, oral, or vibrating, and then have intercourse right after that when you're on the cusp of it, so it can kind of bring you over the edge. What I think is most important for your boyfriend to understand is that your lack of orgasm during intercourse is not a statement about his effectiveness as a lover, but rather the fact that women and men are created differently, and what is easy for him, i.e. having an orgasm during vaginal intercourse, is not easy for you, even if that's the way that he has most been trained to expect you to have an orgasm. The facts are there. You can pick up any sex book with instructions about intercourse. And they will tell him the same thing I'm telling you right now. It's not just my opinion, it's a fact. Yes, you can learn to have an orgasm during intercourse. And for some women, the clitoris is just a few micrometers differently arranged from the opening to the vagina, and they can have an orgasm a little bit easier. And let me say one more thing about this. Sometimes men believe that having an orgasm during intercourse is so easy for a woman because they've been lied to. They've had women have an orgasm, so-called having an orgasm, with them very quickly because that woman wanted to please the guy. She knew what he was expecting. So she had, quote unquote, an orgasm that he thought, well, okay, look what I did. But in fact, sometimes that was false information and he shouldn't rely on it. And often women are just embarrassed that, they can't have an orgasm that way. So they pretend to have an orgasm that way. And nobody is really having the sex life they should because they're being inauthentic. They're not really saying, hey, this is how far I get and I don't get further this way. A lot of people learn how to have an orgasm a certain way, and then that's what they do. And that's okay. There are sex therapists that can help your guy if you could get him to talk to one. A lot of guys don't understand that if they're having an orgasm, before 3 minutes of intromission, they would be cataloged by sex therapists as premature ejaculation. A lot of men do have orgasms before that time. I'm not sure why 3 minutes was picked, but that's what's used as a standard. And hey, they just had an orgasm, they're fine. What they don't understand, or the question is, don't they care that their partner needs more intromission time to be excited and to maybe have an orgasm? Sometimes you can accommodate it to having gotten so stimulated before intromission, before he enters, that you may not need more than a minute or two of further stimulation. But that doesn't mean you wouldn't like more time for intercourse. So the big question is, since your guy doesn't care, he thinks he's happy, are you telling him how much you feel deprived? Because he may not, A, know that. You may have lightened it up and he doesn't realize he's really feeling deprived. And B, he may not understand that this is a real loss for you in terms of the pleasure you would like, or for that matter, may have been used to before him. So for me, does he care? I mean, the idea being, okay, he's happy, but does he care about how you are experiencing this? And that's the most important thing of all. I mean, this is a partnership. He's doing this with you. You should be an important voice to him. And if you're not, I would say, is it because he's scared? Because maybe he knows this is too quick and he's embarrassed and he doesn't think he can control it, and so he wants to put some bravado out there? Can you break through that? Or does he really not care about how you feel? And if he really doesn't, I would worry about that. Does he try and satisfy you in different ways because he doesn't think he can last? This needs a lot of discussion. What I will say on the good side of this is something that can be relearned. For example, if a man takes Viagra or Levitra or one of those drugs, they will help him last longer. There are ways to sort of retrain your sexual release that a therapist can show you, or some books can show you. So the important thing is it can be fixed. It really can be, or at least lengthened out somewhat. And that said, what's really going on between you, and why can't you two figure this out together? Does he really care about you or not? I'd want to know that. Well, I'm not sure why somebody would feel like touching your scrotum is offensive. maybe they feel that that puts them in a generic category. Okay, you're used to having your balls touched, and so they would be doing something that other people had done for you. I think it deserves a discussion. Why is it offensive? I think it might have something to do with feeling like it's not personal between the two of you. But I think you have to, talk about it. It's just a way you learn to have an orgasm, and that's why you need her help. Now, that may have some difficulty with her unless you show her how she can do that. And it may be difficult in the throes of any kind of passion she's doing to kind of reach up and have long enough arms to touch you there while you're getting close. So that might need some choreography for her to be able to do it, and some explanation. I think the idea of having to have orgasm a certain way is real and should not be seen as something personal or generic, but just a habit that in fact is very hard for you to break. And why should you? It's just an additional little touch that she might be able to give you, and you might even say it as a way like, I can't do this for myself. I need you to help me with this, and I would appreciate it so much because it's us two figuring this out together. Well, I think the key words you've said in your question are shame and embarrassment. I think, first of all, you have to work on yourself. Is this something you feel is appropriate? Is oral sex something that you enjoy and feel is appropriate for a sexual relationship? Or maybe not. Maybe there's things you have to work through so that you're confident this is something that's important to you and perfectly reasonable to ask for. My feeling is if you're intimate enough to be having intercourse or whatever else you're doing, you should be able to talk about what you like and what you want and why it's not happening. My best advice is not to do that when you're in bed, but in a nice conversation, say, I'd like to go deeper and more honestly express myself to you. And I think we're at a point where that would be a good thing. And I want you to know that previously, oral sex has been something I really enjoyed, and I assume enjoy giving, or I don't know that much about your question, but I'm guessing that you probably do it for him. But either way, you just say, this is something I like, and I'd like to include it, but if there's something about it that bothers you or you're not used to it, let me know. Let me hear from you just what you feel about this. If you can't talk about it, I really feel, why are you doing sexual acts together to someone you can't talk to? So, hey, let's step one up and, create a relationship that includes honest feelings. Betty Dodson was a pioneer in sex education. And she did do some wonderful and sometimes outrageous things. Betty passed away recently, but I believe that there's a library of her research and a lot of the ways that she would make videos showing women pleasuring themselves effectively. You might contact the Kinsey Institute, who I think have ownership of her library, a lot of her works. Kinsey Institute in Bloomington, Indiana, which is attached to Indiana University. And then just Google Betty Dodson and see where her material can be found. It's not pornographic because it was never meant to be pornographic. Some of her drawings, she was a gorgeous, skilled craftsman in drawing. So there's lots of things she's drawn. But she also made these videos that are very objective and also very explicit. And I'm sure that if you do enough research, you can find